Okay, everything's on.
Okay, I apologize. I could see one person at a time until my son came down and told me how to make this work.
We'll actually need a note from your wife, Grant, indicating why you were late.
Well, that yeah, my own stupidity, because somehow I logged on and the only thing I could see was the mayor and Rob Scott, one person at a time, and nobody heard me. So I had to have my son come down and show me how to make this work.
Now, Grant, if you're saying it's because of stupidity, you shouldn't have a hard time getting a note. None of us should have a hard time getting a note from our wives in that regard.
Okay, I will.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, welcome to the General Plan Steering Committee meeting this evening, and let me thank you for your participation in our committee. I'd just like to make a couple remarks, and first of all, thank Lynn for putting the meeting together, and thanks to Scott in advance for leading us in our introduction tonight, whether it's a thought, a prayer, a pledge of allegiance. Thank you for doing that. And thanks to all for joining. I just want to emphasize really the importance. Let's see, is everybody who's not speaking muted at the current time so we don't get background? So in any event, I just want to thank all of you for participating and just really re-emphasize the task and the importance of the task we've asked you to do. I think our last general plan was in 2015, and things have changed a lot since 2015, I believe, and will continue to change going forward. So this most likely will be a living document. I've asked Councilman Barker to sit as a member of this committee so that you will have a direct connection to the City Council. And also I will be continuing to join the meeting to make sure that I provide the resources and answer any questions you may have. So tonight, you'll see after Scott takes care of our opening of the meeting, that we'll be appointing a chairperson. Really, co-chairs is what I've decided to do here. And I'd like them to take the lead in organizing the meeting and to make our meetings as effective and efficient as possible. I know everyone has other things, and so as we go through this, we want to keep focused on the areas that are important to getting the general plan recommendations to the City Council. And once again, we'll try to give as much oversight as we can to you, but ultimately the recommendation you come up with will be approved or disapproved by the City Council. I have confidence that those of you who are sitting on the committee will come up with a good plan. And I just want to thank you also, those of you who volunteered to kind of serve as either chair or vice chair on the committee, and your willingness to do that. But let's go ahead and get started now. Let's ask Scott Schumann if he'll open. I don't know if he has a thought, an invocation, or whatever, then we'll have a pledge of allegiance. So Scott?
All right, so those of you, you guys hear me all right?
We can.
All right, so those of you that know me, there's not too many thoughts in my head, but I looked up at a poster in my office, and I have a poster from a book from Andy Andrews called The Traveler's Gift. And there's 7 decisions that he talks about that everybody makes that are attributed to successful people. And I thought one of them was very applicable to today in our time, and it's number 5 on his list, and it's, today I will choose to be happy. And in the book, it actually takes him to Anne Frank and in the trials that her and her family were dealing with, and the fact that she always had a positive attitude and approached life as to be happy. And, you know, a couple things is, you know, she chose to smile every day. Like, again, if you know me at all, I don't do that very often. And also, like, start every day with laughter. And, the general idea is it's a choice, and we don't let other people take away our happiness. And so we need to just keep that as a choice for us. And then also the goals hand in hand with that is to have a grateful spirit. So that's my thought. If you haven't read that book, Andy Andrews' Traveler's Gift, it's a great book. And we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
If everybody
allegiance.
could stand.
I don't know if I want that view. All right, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Scott, for doing that for us. Our first item of business tonight is to appoint individuals to help lead this committee. Their responsibility will be to put together a meaningful agenda, working with Lynn, who will get the agenda out. Also, their responsibility will to let us know as city leaders what resources they need and what help they need. And also to coordinate closely with Councilman Barker so that he can report to the city council. I think it's important we have interim information given to the council. The last thing I want is for this group to accumulate a good plan and have it be a surprise to the council. So our commitment is that we will keep them informed as we go forward so that we don't run into any major roadblocks. So I've asked Grant Protzman and Stephanie Casey to co-chair this committee. They will work together, as I said, creating an agenda, and then they will take turns rotating, conducting the meeting. So with that, I don't know if you have any questions before we move into public comment. Are there any questions? If not, we'll go to public comments, and Lynn, if you would watch and let us know if there's anybody that raises their hand, wants to speak, or if there's a chat. We'll give a few minutes to see if we have any comments from the public. You're muted, Lynn, so we can't hear you.
So sorry. There's only one call-in listener, and I think it's Ryan Barker. I don't know for sure, but I think that's him. So there are no public.
Okay, well, we'll move on to item 3 on our agenda tonight, which will be led by Rob Scott, the legendary Rob Scott. And he'll continue discussion on the Central Business District. So Rob, you want to go ahead and lead the discussion?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to, let's see, Lynn, I'm going to be able to share screen, right?
Yes.
Looking, oh, here it is, right here. You cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing. So you need to give me the ability to do that.
Yeah, I already did that.
So what's on the screen is the agenda. So
Right.
I wonder if she closes out the agenda, if that would allow her to.
Yeah, that. Okay. There you go.
Okay. I've been doing a considerable amount of thinking about the direction that we've been heading regarding the development of an appropriate set of standards for our downtown and Southtown. And as a part of that, I had an opportunity this past week to go to the little town of Pinedale, Wyoming. I don't know if any of you have been there or not, but it's a delightful place. A little about 2,000 people in population. I happened to be going there to pick up some lumber from Picaroon Timber. Not that that is of any interest to any of you, but if you look in the background, those are the Wind River Mountains. And one of the things that I think that came to mind when I saw those is that I saw the fact that we have our own Ben Lomond, which is a very prominent feature associated with our community here. So Lynn, am I going to have to go to each photo and go in and share a different one?
Rob, you should be able to just click on your images on the left or the right if they're in the same folder.
They are, but I'm not. Okay, let's do that. There we go. So one of the things that, another thing that I was impressed with for this little tiny town of Pinedale, 2,000 people, is that they have a beautiful city park. This is a representation of the pronghorn migration that goes through central Wyoming. You can kind of get a feel for that. And I was reflecting on this as I thought about North Ogden, some of the nice historic features that we have in our community as well. There we go. Take a second to focus. Pinedale, Wyoming, and guess what? Pine Creek. You have some downtown art that is there. One of the things that we have cherry days in North Ogden. In Pinedale, and the 1st of July, they have a huge community event called the Rendezvous, which is a celebration of the historic mountain men. And it's quite a facility that they have set up, and this is a statue in downtown. The other thing that I was very impressed with was a wonderful entryway sign that they have to Pinedale. I was thinking that this is a nice example of maybe something we could even look at in North Ogden at some point in time. So, well, what's the point of all of that? So the next thing I'm going to do is switch to another sheet here. And you should see a thing that says sense of place. Is that, you're seeing that?
Uh-huh.
Great. So as a part of that, the other day I was reading in our APA, American Planning Association, Utah chapter, there was a nice article about the importance of sense of place in our communities. And of all of the things that we are working towards with respect to an ordinance for our downtown, Southtown area, I thought that it might be important to set a little bit of a context for what does it mean to have a sense of place, and let that be one of those guiding principles and understandings that would help us in moving towards a CBD, I shouldn't say CBD, downtown, Southtown type of an ordinance. So some of the things that are really an important part of this are to look at things like our built environment. So when we look at things that are in that area, we look at things that are the proportion of these buildings. We look at the scale of them, the building massing, et cetera, those kinds of things. And that should be something that could help us out in identifying what type of future do we want for these areas. Another huge part of that is community identity. For example, the one that came to mind was that Cherry Days is such a huge part of the community celebration of our history. And each community has a huge amount of community identity that they can relate to beyond an event. And many of you can think of that. Similar things like, again, Ben Lomond, other kinds of things like our public spaces, the stump. We've also identified and started building on our streetscape for Washington Boulevard. Some of the nice features that are there, the pedestrian lighting, the flag, not the flags, but the banners, and the not the landscaping, but the pots and flowers and so forth. So all of those kinds of things are things that I think form a basis for each one of our experiences within the downtown and the Southtown areas. What I did the other night was have a similar discussion with our planning commission. And one of the things that I did was I extrapolated from our current general plan some of the character traits from the general plan as it relates to both downtown and Southtown. And then I asked the planning commission to give me some of their comments associated with those. And so I thought that might be an effective exercise for us tonight as well. So as you can see, some of the distinctive character traits for downtown, you can see that list about transit, pedestrian connections, variety of stores, residences, offices, wide pedestrian friendly and attractive sidewalks, well-lit streets, a variety of restaurants, gathering places, and people of all ages. And what's below that is the list that the Planning Commission came up with. And I'm not suggesting that this group should simply rubber stamp what they identified, but I thought it might be helpful for this group to start thinking about what are some of the character traits for both downtown and Southtown. There's a list for Southtown as well. Why don't we talk about Southtown to begin with, and as you would like to jump in as a committee, and I'll start listing some of those things, and that might be something that could help us further identify what it is that the community wants to see in those areas. So as far as downtown, committee members, what are some of the distinctive character traits that are important to you?
So we're gonna do south or downtown first specifically.
Sure, I thought that would be helpful if, or we
Okay.
could do them both at the same time, but
No, I think that
I'm kind of
probably,
I'm kind of shallow minded. I can only do one thing at once.
no, I'm with you. And I think probably doing them separate is a good idea. I have some questions before just throwing out ideas of what we think would look good. As I read through the existing general plan and it describes our downtown and Southtown area, I think we should identify what areas are already established and what areas we even, we have the opportunity to zone or even have a voice in how that will look as it's developed. I think that's one of the biggest things that I struggle with when we talk about these general ideas. Where exactly are we going to put those? What's already been developed? Where do we, have room for growth and say into what that could look like? So I don't know if that makes sense, if anybody else agrees.
I agree with that. Stacy. We got to consider what's already there and how we can work around that.
Yeah, I'd like to identify when we talk about these things and the look, where that actually will be implemented, where that will actually go, because having a general idea of something looking a certain way is great, but we already have so much established that it seems the best path would be to look at what isn't established and how to work there. If that makes sense. So in downtown, I imagine it's the area where kind of behind America First, where we've got the O'Reilly's. That's still available to be developed, and certainly the look of our Bicentennial Park. Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with both of those places. Especially in our downtown area, there's not a lot of places left that we can, like, you know, that's left open. You know, we've got a little bit down there by what used to be Red Hanger Cleaners by Zions
Yeah.
Bank. There's that little property right there. But basically, you know, we don't have a lot of stuff left.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
you know, and
you
I
know,
think also looking at what is developed and how to continue to build upon that to keep cohesion. You know, I mean, we have a lot of North Ogden that's already established, and that can't be changed. That's kind of what we need to build off of, in my opinion.
Hey, this is Mayor Brooby. Just a question. Rob, and maybe John might have to chime in on this one. One of the things we're going to be facing in the next couple of years is the utilization of the RDA funds we have. Have we identified what areas in Southtown and Northtown? Somebody's sweeping or something.
Yeah, I know, somebody's cleaning.
Not on mute. But have we identified which areas in downtown or Southtown are in this CDA or the RDA that might take redevelopment opportunities as part of the plan? John?
We do have a map. We haven't specified individual properties in either as part of this discussion, but we can, partly because there's a mix of RDA and CDA in both areas. So a good example is the Lee's Plaza is all in the redevelopment area, and the area by O'Reilly's is all in the community development area. So, and they're both technically in the north or in the downtown area.
What about the plaza down by Kurt's Drive-In, where Pizza Man and stuff is?
That's Southtown.
It's in the RDA.
Yeah, I just would like to make sure the committee knows what's in the RDA and the CDA, and you know, maybe they have some suggestions on that too, because.
And I believe both of those projects were on the list of RDA options when it was discussed with the council, both Bicentennial Park and the Kurtz Plaza. And there is actually some redesign options in the general plan of the Kurtz Plaza. So I know that that's been looked at. So.
Just want to make sure you consider that as.
Yeah, and and as we move forward, I think we need to build off of what we have and where we're at instead of starting over, trying to, we already have lights down the road, down Washington with all sorts of stuff, so.
Yeah, I further that thought is, that's the nice thing about having a general plan that identifies a direction and a vision. And then as that vision continues to be implemented, then it's something that you get to build upon. So your comment and your insight on that is just right on target.
Rob,
Well, Mayor, is your concern is that we need to look at spending that RDA money?
Well, it's going to expire, I think,
Yeah.
is it 2024, John?
okay.
I'm just-
I
So
yeah.
it ought to be blended in with, you know, whatever we're talking about in regards to the general plan. That would probably be helpful as we decide how to use that RDA money.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I think
Blend
we
things
should,
together.
yeah, we should definitely take it into consideration when we're looking at, you know, the areas and these things that, you know, Rob showed us and some of the areas in, what was that little town? Sorry. But some of that nice areas, we need to look at what we have existing and how can we make that more usable for our residents, more
let
of
me-
these spaces that we're talking about.
Let me just clarify. I think we have to have a plan in place. We don't have to have all the money spent by
Yeah.
2024.
right, so
No,
the,
but isn't there committees in place that are in charge of that? So I just don't want to overstep boundaries, you
But
know?
once again, I think it's good to blend things together, not to look at these things independently.
I
Because I
agree.
think the pieces all fit together. So the council actually, and we'll ask the Economic Development Committee for ideas also. But I really
There
think
is a
that,
list somewhere for the RDA projects.
well, those are only ones that have been identified thus far. Those aren't in concrete. So if you guys have
Yeah.
any additional ideas that fits into the general plan that you're going to be presenting, those are still open for discussion.
Okay.
Rob, this is Grant. I have a quick question for you. Do we have any environmental restrictions? At one point, I heard that the area between ACE and the library, city building and so on, was designated as a wetland. If that's the case, do we have other areas that are designated in that way, and we have to consider that in our planning?
John may be more familiar with other areas, but the one that you just described is definitely it's not a huge problem, but it is something to make sure we take into account.
Sure.
I'm
Well,
not sure of any others that are in that area, but
okay. Well, I think we
Might be.
need to consider those, and
Sure.
in particular, we can use some of that as an advantage and build around it, and use it as a focal point for different kinds of things rather than view it as a problem.
yes. Anybody else have any thoughts about downtown? You can kind of see the list that the Planning Commission
Mhm.
focused on. And
Mhm.
I think they're in line with the kinds of things that our discussion this evening as well. So
Yeah, so
Rob, sorry, go ahead, Steph.
I can see the list, but expanding on that, where are we seeing that? Gathering places that includes events and
Yeah.
entertainment. Where are we imagining that in our downtown area? I mean, that sounds nice.
that's kind of my thoughts too. Do
We only have we
Yeah,
only have a
mine
certain
too.
amount of
Space for all of
undeveloped
that?
space. So a variety of restaurants sounds great. We don't have a lot of space. I mean, we've got all of that space on 2700, but it's
So-
got a O'Reilly's.
So this list is an aspirational list. And remember what a general plan really does. It establishes a vision, and it's a very broad document, and the implementation is where we end up getting down to the details. So as
Okay.
part of the specifics for gathering places, to me, that's a great topic to say, where are there potential gathering places? And are those gathering places ones that are strictly a orientation towards private business, or are they a combination of that along with the public? So again, the Bicentennial Park and the Stump and so forth, that's actually
Yeah.
one of the things that's talked about in the plan.
Yeah, that actually seems like the most obvious place
Mhm.
in the downtown district
And
to
as-
establish and
And as you may know, we've had some discussion about closing off Pleasant View Drive above there
Right.
and extending, could that be part of the plan as a gathering place if we, we extended that park out? Obviously Centennial Park needs some work. Those are the type of things we might look at it and say, well, wow, we don't have any space there. But if we looked outside the box and said, well, wonder if that
Mhm.
intersection got closed there and we forced traffic down 300, that would give us more room for some type of gathering place. So I think, we can't just maybe limit everything to what we see now. There are some options, I think, where we can expand opportunity for places like that.
yeah, I agree. I really
Well-
like that.
Mhm. What,
One thing that we'll need to consider too is that more and more people are spending time walking that trail heading towards Pleasant View as well. And we need to make sure that we have connections with our trail system as well.
right. Do we have space south of Smith's that's open for use at this point, or is it all kind of designated for other kinds of purposes? Really all the way down to IHC. I've heard that they actually plan on expanding that into a mini hospital facility. Is that part of the on the books right now? Do they own that property, or?
They do own the property. They have not, at least I'm not aware of any approach about a specific project at this time, but somebody else might be aware of something.
Okay.
Sometimes the planning office is the last to know.
Yeah.
So let me just suggest this, that I'll make sure that Lynn sends this list out. We're going to talk about Southtown in just a minute, but this is an opportunity when we're talking about these kinds of projects, and we're talking about the future and what have you. This is an opportunity to really put our broad brush and maybe think a little bit out of the box. Sometimes the ideas are generated that initially seem maybe somewhat unrealistic, but in the long run, they may just be something that is really important to the community. So,
Rob, does the city still own the property where the old maintenance building and so on used to be, west of the
yes,
animal hospital?
yes,
Okay. And in that little corner between the print shop and Cafe Rio, is that designated for any particular uses? Is that owned by the folks who
America First.
America First owns that?
I believe so.
that's correct.
Okay, so that corner, probably, I doubt they're going to build a new facility there. They might, but we maybe could do some kind of a swap with them to tie that into a broader communal gathering area.
Sure.
Have you put any thought at all to using the space between the pool and 2700 North and putting some kind of a gathering place in the middle of that?
Isn't that Prominent Point
I
or not Village or Patriot Point?
I'm not certain. All I know is that we can fill it with O'Reilly's and AutoZone and so on, or that.
Okay, that side.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's,
that's,
he's talking
that's
about
out
the
commercial.
detention basin.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that area. And then the property west of that, that's still under private ownership. Do they have any plans for development of it? That used to be Hal's, property.
We processed a couple of minor adjustments to their property, but they seem content to have residential there at this point.
Okay.
There's definitely some parcels there that would be able to be redeveloped or.
Well, but as we take a step back and say, if we want to have a city center, we have to have enough room to put the restaurants and businesses and park area and so on into it. And so as we look at RDA money, that may be a place that we can slice out, as well as the area between Lee's and the old maintenance facilities and so on, and kind of create a place where there can be gatherings and so on scattered throughout.
I think we got to be careful when we talk about gathering places that we don't take away prime commercial development.
Right.
I agree with the spot up by the old maintenance building, because that's kind of out of the way, but also with the gathering place, you're going to have a lot of foot traffic and it could be a safety issue. So
yeah, true.
Well, in a lot of communities, what they end up doing is they partner with the private sector so that the events are ones that draw people to the commercial businesses, along with providing an opportunity for interaction of the community and the citizens, et cetera. So it gets to be a really nice partnership.
Well,
I think one thing that we should consider when we think of this, when we go down to Farmington Station, how they have their areas set up down there. I mean, they have that to the east side of that. They have all the big box stores and things like that. But then that area where the Apple store is and several other smaller things, it's like a little walking community. And there is a road.
And I love that. I mean, I love that. But do we see that happening in North Ogden? I mean, that retention basin's been, that property's been for sale for a while. We're having 7-Eleven want to come in on Washington. So I'm not sure that we're going to get those kinds of shops realistically. I'd love to think that we could or would, but I don't know.
Well, I'm thinking more restaurants.
Yeah, I mean the same. I would love to see more restaurants come in. That would be great. I don't know. Have we had any? Well, I guess you can't really say, but I know that all of that is zoned for commercial and has been available. So, I think that would be something to consider as businesses start to come in. I think right now Bicentennial Park is there. It's existing. It has the stump that many people know about it. It's got a really cool history. Robert Redford dedicated it. There's a lot of cool stuff that we're just kind of letting go and not touching.
Right.
And I think really focusing on that before starting something new is.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with you, Stephanie. We need to emphasize what we have. And we have a lot of quality there, and there's ways to expand that to make it so it's more accessible to more people, because right now, Bicentennial Park is just pretty small.
And I love Mark's idea. I'm not saying not. I just
right.
I think until we really know what's coming or what's going to be there, we utilize what Rob says. We just give ideas of what we like and. But
well, just a thought. Rob has prepared this list. A lot of it came, I believe, from the Planning Commission. We know it's an extensive list. We're not going to be able to do all those things, but what exercise can we go through to rank these things by the participants in this committee and then focus in on those? We talked about gathering places. It's a very extensive list. We somehow need to narrow that down for the ability to focus. So how can we do that from you guys' standpoint?
Mayor, this is Julie. I think one of the things we could do is I think we need to reach out to the public and the citizens of North Ogden and say, okay, here's the list that we put out. What is it out of these things? Rank them from 1 to 10, or how many we put out there. Rank them from 1 to 10 and then say, hey, and I think we get an idea of what people are looking for. I think sometimes we're dwelling on the businesses, the businesses aren't coming yet, and we need to evaluate why the businesses aren't coming. But also, as the businesses maybe start to pick up, I mean, right now we're living in who knows what's going to happen to us moment. But I think if we reach out to the citizens and say, could you rank these from 1 to 10, just to give us an idea of what it is people want to see in those specific areas that are still left to be developed, and what kind of things they would, and if we give them an actual list, because if you were to ask people, just give us your top 10 things you'd like to see there, we could, the list would grow exponentially. So
I agree with you, but I think you as a committee need to narrow this down to the top 10.
absolutely, yeah, totally. I totally agree with that,
You
Mayor.
need to get this down to where it can be focused on, and I have no problem with seeking input from the citizens. In fact, I encourage that. But I'm just telling you, you give them this list, it'll be very confusing to them. So I think this committee has an obligation to narrow this list down.
Well, absolutely, I totally
Mayor,
agree.
I'd
Mayor.
agree with that also. My sense is giving people a list is one thing, but pointing out the areas that are available is an essential part of that, because everybody wants to have, this, that, and the other. But once they realize we have some space and traffic limitations, then they'll be able to give us a more realistic set of input.
I agree with that. I think they need to know what area of town they're
Right.
interested in.
Right.
Well, I think those things do go hand in hand, Grant. And I think that's two things that this committee ought to do is, first of all, identify what the possibilities are, not just looking at what's available right now.
Right.
What are the possibilities?
Right.
And then align those with the list, because you're right. If we don't have room for some of these things, there's no use putting them on the list.
Right.
But I think that's, maybe
Good.
everybody on this committee knows what properties are available in downtown and Southtown, and what they're currently zoned or what they'd have to be zoned. So that seems like two things that would be important to get started with, to help Rob as we talk about this commercial business district in either Southtown or downtown.
Right.
I have a question.
Rob, I have a question. Are streetlight fixtures an RDA expenditure or not?
I don't believe they are, but John could tell us.
I mean, isn't the RDA to help businesses and not to really dress up the town?
I think it's a combination that you can do some public investment as well as partnering with the private sector. John, you can help me.
Yeah, it's not a very narrow field. It's meant to stimulate economic growth in the area. So whatever accomplishes that helps or qualifies as an expense.
Well, Rob, would that be helpful regarding item 3 on our agenda, to have to narrow down this list and identify the areas that would be usable, identified along with what's in the CDA and the RDA? Would that be helpful to get moving on this item 3 agenda? Or does the committee have anything else that would be helpful for us in the discussion on the central business district, as Rob has requested?
Well, I was wondering, is this just to spend this RDA money, or are we talking about rewriting the general plan? Because I don't know how long this new general plan is going to last, but there's a possibility of a lot of change happening over the next 5 to 10 years. And so we wouldn't want to rule anything out, any categories out, just because there's not space for it if this general plan is going to last some time.
Well, that's, I think, Christina, why I mentioned that we can't look at just what's available, what's potentially possible. We've got to look outside the box.
Right.
And in answer to your first question, the RDA would be just maybe a subcategory, potential availability to redo those areas to fit into what the overall general plan is.
Okay,
think as
put
Rob-
together then, or ask Rob to put together for us kind of a map of the area, what we have as CDA opportunities and what that means, what we have as RDA opportunities, where that's designated now and what that means, and identify those geographically for us. And then that gives us kind of a base to say, okay, as we move forward, what can we put here and there? And do we want to expand this or that in another direction?
Yeah, Grant, if I could just add on to that, it's, once again, the RDA and the CDA would just be subcategories of potential uses.
Right.
I think as Rob indicated, the general plan is kind of the overall umbrella
Right.
under which we kind of get a direction.
Sure.
Every meeting I've been in when there's been a rezone or the planning commission looks at something,
Yeah.
there's always a thing, the planning commission says, yes, this does comply with the general plan.
Right.
So it's going to have an overall bearing on the direction. And as I indicated, it should probably be a living document,
Mm-hmm.
but we've got to start at what we want to do now. So I think to Christina's point,
Mm-hmm.
we've got to look beyond what's available today, what might be a possibility for what we want to accomplish.
Right.
And this is, I think, a really healthy discussion because it points out the fact that general plans don't get implemented by regulation. Regulation helps to implement things, but it's activities, it's investment, it's the vision of individuals. Sometimes it's groups that get together and make things happen. That is a really important part of implementation of any general plan, no matter what community you're in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if maybe we could turn our attention for just a minute to the South Town. You can see the list that's there and see if there are some things that you'd like to include on that list. And then we can share this with the group and we can put together some kind of a prioritization exercise for you.
So I have a question. It's Julie. The second one, build upon the uniqueness of the cannery building. I think we've maybe passed that because they put those townhomes next to it. What was their thinking? I just need to know what their thinking was behind that. I think that this would be a great area to really possibly make it more of an area where people can walk. There's the open area behind the I don't know what that building is. It used to be Macy's, the old grocery store. You've got the open space right there that hasn't been developed. So there's a lot of potential down there, but at the same time, we've also removed some of the potential. So can you tell me, Rob, what they mean about build upon the uniqueness of the cannery building?
Well, that's a statement from the general plan, and I can
Okay.
give you my interpretation of what that means, but I think it has to do with there's very few buildings that really have historic character along our downtown in that area. And so it's building things not only next to it, but recognizing that there is a specific character to the cannery building, and are there some aspects of that particular facility that could either be emphasized or possibly even replicated somewhere else? That's my interpretation.
When we put that general plan together, I was on that group. It was that we were going to look at developing the area around the cannery as kind of a symbol of North Ogden and what North Ogden was. And when they started building the townhomes, that was kind of like, oops, we lost out on that. One thought is using that area. It is a gathering place. I mean, you can't go there during the summer. Sometimes there's car rallies there at Kurt's. They have the Chalk Art Festival there. So it is a gathering spot, and maybe a central plaza if we do allow businesses to develop in there that we have an open area that, you know, tables, benches, whatever, or even a fountain, even, you know, we talked one time of having that being open with the water coming down, with an open flowing stream coming down there that crosses Washington Boulevard over to the stream there by Big O. So
I think
you know,
that's a good area to look at, a gathering spot and to really put a focus on our city. It's already started to be that, I think.
It's where I see the most people walking. You know, I hear walkable discussed a lot, but I can't quite, you know, vision that when I see things, but that area, I see a lot of people out. That's where I see most people walking around, and it's kind of, you know, an inviting area.
I agree that it's inviting because the only main street there is Washington Boulevard. I think walking around downtown gets difficult because of 2700 and Washington. But I think that area down there is a good gathering spot.
I think, doesn't 2700, that's the back, like, that's where Patriot Point comes along. And with that being an MPC, it requires some kind of business. And I believe that was set for 2700. Am I correct? John, you called,
No.
you know?
Oh, it was fun.
Well, Patriot Point's
that-
on,
Okay, sorry.
yeah, Patriot Point's on 2550.
But doesn't it, runs,
It doesn't extend over to 2700.
it doesn't. Okay, so I'm thinking then it's 2550 that they've got the
Yes.
businesses slated for. Okay. I'm trying to find a good map in the general plan so I can have a little more insight into where be more specific into my thinking, but there's a lot.
This is where, you know, we talked about those townhouses just north of the cannery. And that's a case in point.
Yeah.
That needs to be done, because when they came to build those, there was absolutely nothing we could do. It didn't seem to make any sense. The guy who owned the cannery had tried to buy that property, and I don't know, there's some kind of a feud going on there between the two of them. Then the guy who owned the property says, no, you will buy this over my dead body. But then he turned around and sold it for townhouses. This is where, you know, we've got to have a vision. Then the next follow-up discussion, where we talk about vesting the general plan, is where this has to, you know, we've got to do something. Having a vision is important, but the vision is probably have to have some teeth to it, or we'll end up with car washes and townhouses all up and down Main Street. And then
Yeah.
we could have another car wash too, because you go out to Roy, right on 1900, and you could throw rocks from one to the next.
And this is where I you know, I don't like, is it Christina? Sorry, said, you know, we should plan bigger. I agree. But I think part of the issue we're facing right now is we're not real specific with some of the areas that we have that are open. So we're ending up with a really wide range that's not getting us any kind of plan. And you know, so I think that needs to be addressed, as well as the future and possibilities. I think we certainly need to look for possibilities, but we need to look at what's available now and make sure that we're building in at what's happening now to make the future and something cohesive. So
in regards to that, to maybe wrap up this discussion, could we have this list narrowed down?
yes.
Then could we identify current open areas for opportunity? And then those areas that might not be open that we think could be good for opportunity? Because just because there's something there now, for instance, will Mrs. Kavanaugh's be there forever next to the cannery? You know, I think we've got to look at what
Who knows?
what might work and dream a little bit in that regard.
For sure.
The two things, could we do that? Could we narrow down this list that's been provided? And if there's something not on there, maybe we ought to start with this committee identifying their top 10. Or if there's something on this list that's not there that should be, let's add it, have the committee, once again, narrow it to the top 10, identify potential sites that are open, could be open, with maybe some subcategory of this is in an RDA or a CDA. And then that'll give us the opportunity to consider the suggestion Julie gave us, which is get some input from the community at that point. Could we take that as part of item 3? Would that be helpful, Rob?
Yes, I think so, Mayor. If I could suggest that maybe we can send this initial list out, give people an opportunity to add to it, and then come back and then do a prioritization exercise so that the group can identify the specifics for both sub-districts. So if that sounds amenable to you.
Yeah, I agree.
I have a question just before we go to that. The first item on there is the gateway to the city. And from the discussion at council meeting last night, I think they had envisioned it being down at 1,700. I don't know how much room there is at 1,700. There's probably only space for one development, but I mean, if we want a gateway more back into this business district, I think that's a different consideration.
So there's a couple aspects to gateways. Part of it is the specific uses that are there. Part of it is the invitation to people coming to the community to say, oh, I'm now arrived. Here's North Ogden. There's something here that is worthy of note for us to be able to say, hey, I've arrived at a destination point that is significant. So if it's okay with the group, I'll revamp this list a little bit, and then we'll get it sent out to you. And committee members, if you would put your thinking caps on, add to the list, and then we'll finalize the list, and then we'll send it out to the group, and you can start thinking about prioritizing. In the meantime, we'll do some more research about putting some mapping together, and with respect to open areas, the RDA, CDA, those are the notes that I have. So,
Rob,
does that sound like a direction?
Yeah, when could you get that out to the committee so they'd be prepared for discussion?
I can get it out first of next week.
Super.
Okay, so the committee could be expecting that out
Right.
the first of next week on. And once again, just a word of encouragement. If you see other areas that would be potential, let's identify those too and see what might happen in the future with those areas. Like I say, if we want to develop more by the cannery, we know we probably can't go north, but you know, maybe there's an opportunity to go south across the street.
Right.
So the list is easy to get out. The other information as far as the mapping and the other things, that's going to take a little while to get that together.
Okay.
So Tuesday of next week?
Thanks, Mayor.
Well, you know, you said next week, and Monday is for the list, so I thought you'd have all day Tuesday.
Yeah.
Can't we look at the current zoning map and see what's there and go from that?
Right.
Well, what we need to put together is a land use map.
Right.
So that we have identified those properties that are vacant and those that are already built upon. The next exercise are some things that are built upon, are they underutilized? So that's another subcategory.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. There's one thing that, and I'm not certain this is the great time to bring it up or not, but my sense is, particularly if we're going to go to the city council and say, hey, please pass this 6-month moratorium, that this group's going to have to meet more than once a month. We need to accelerate our timeline and our considerations and move a little faster so that we could take full advantage of the moratorium, which I'm hoping the council will pass this next time around. And I don't know how committee members feel about it, but I feel the sense of urgency to get this thing together. We need to have public hearings. We need to make it an open process where there's lots of input, but we need to move it.
Well, that's why we have 2 co-chairs, is to kind of direct the effort. So I'll
Okay.
leave that up to you and Stephanie, and you can contact the committee members and see their commitment and availability. And I think there is, we want to do it right, but we
Right.
also want to do it in a reasonable amount of time. We don't want to drag this on forever.
Agreed. Okay.
So with that,
Yeah, I agree. And
Good.
I do want to say I missed the meeting after Julie and Meg presented, and I do want to let them know that I appreciate the work that they did and the fact that they stepped up and was willing to do that, because they kind of took a beating. And
Yeah.
I really felt bad because, they were asking for our input, and I don't know that they got a lot. And I think that they really went out on a limb for the committee and all the work we've been doing. So I just want to make sure that they know how much I do appreciate that, because they were there and they presented in front of the council for all of us.
Yeah,
And
and we're gonna address that in item 5 too, to see if we can get that, the approach to that differently. And I think we still have Councilman Barker with us who can hopefully help us there. So thanks for your input on item 3. We'll now go to the legend, John Call, city manager and attorney, and he will lead us in a discussion to consider how to streamline a decision on vesting residential zones and densities in the city. So, John?
Thanks, Mayor. So this is not a long discussion. The main focus of this discussion is we've talked a lot about the maps and the future vesting. The council, or Councilman Barker presented information to the council. They said, go ahead and move forward with the vesting program. And so the next step is having some, you'd almost call it a subcommittee or whatever that this group feels is appropriate, of individuals who can look at this map that's on the screen in front of you right now, which is our current city map for zoning, and look at the areas that are white, look at areas that are going to be annexed into the city. It's down at the bottom of the screen, but this red area down here, potentially this area up here, and let's make the map match the zone that this group feels like should be the recommended zone through build out, so that we don't deal with a bunch of rezone requests. We're basically locking in stone, vesting the general plan, and turning the general plan map to look more like this as opposed to the other map, which I think you remember is more of a just kind of, it's like 3 colors. Here's some commercial, here's some residential, and here's some maybe open space. So it would also include, or the other recommendation from that subcommittee would be to look in these areas that are blue. Look in this area down here in the city to say, where do we want to look for the TDR conservation zones? Where do we want to save density, pull density out? And with that would also include where would we want to transfer that? So I guess what I'm looking for from the committee is, I think my recommendation would be to select a few individuals to take this project on and to come back and present to the group what they're recommending on the actual zoning by property recommendations, so that this group can finalize this part of the map and this part of the discussion.
Do we have anybody on the committee that wants into this exercise? you know, that really has high priority of being involved in it, because if there's interest, let's tap that first.
Grant and I agree with that. It's always good to have volunteers. May I suggest that we try to get a member of the Planning Commission involved in this? They're very familiar with that, so I would hope that one of the volunteers would be someone from the Planning Commission, because once again, they're very intertwined with
Absolutely.
this.
I think that you just nominated Dawn, right?
Don or Eric, whichever one
Yeah.
you know, can unmute the quickest and say they're not interested. I guess the other one is. Do we have any volunteers from the planning?
Maybe it's just
commission?
both of them.
I know they're pretty busy, but I do think, or is there a recommendation? Well, we have Don and Eric from the Planning Commission on here, so
Okay.
could we hear from them if there's a possibility?
Smile, Don.
Don, can you hear us?
There, I was trying to find the unmute. Gosh, I have just been so totally swamped with everything going on. I'm just worried that I won't be able to give it the priority it needs.
Don, do you have somebody on the commission that you would recommend to come in and help us through this is kind of a nuanced, specific kind of set of requirements here.
Yeah, there is the possibility that Eric could cut back his golf games. I mean, we haven't heard from him.
Well, if you put a bunch of golfers on it, that'd give them an opportunity to talk about it.
That's right. We need a golf course in North Ogden, right? That'll be the first priority. The two probably. I'm just thinking on the Planning Commission right now, and Eric's probably there. He can chime in too, but I think Nicole would be a really good, but I don't know what her time constraints are. Nicole.
I saw
Nancaro.
Eric just chatted, said Commissioner Nancaro.
Yeah.
Would one of the chair people take on that assignment to talk to her and see if she'd be willing to do that?
I'll be happy.
Grant?
Yeah.
Okay.
If Lynn can make sure to get me the contact information.
Sure.
I will follow through with her. Okay, so we have that slot filled. Who else on our group wants to be involved in this? Let's not all speak up at once.
Can I say John Arrington stands out to me. He's always, and I've heard him commenting at all the council meetings and stuff. He seems to always have a voice. Or same with Christina.
Well, unless they say no.
I could try to do that, but Charlotte Bailey isn't with us today. I don't know about considering her.
Really, I think anyone would be great. Nobody's volunteering, so I'm just kind of.
I would help out.
Who? Yes.
Julie.
Okay, good.
All right, Julie. I was thinking you were working on the other thing though, which is why I hadn't brought up your name.
Okay.
So
I mean,
FYI.
I can be just like if you can't find anybody else.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think either Christina or Charlotte and John, I think they would be good.
Well, why don't we just plan on those three and then I'll visit with them along with our planning commission nominee and see if we can't get him started on this. John, would you be willing to meet with this little group separately and help us move this forward as kind of a subcommittee so that we're ready to roll with it pretty quickly?
As far as right now, I should have time to do that.
John, okay, great. That is
And
super.
this is separate from the moratorium that we're talking at number 5, right? So,
Yeah.
okay,
That's a whole
yeah, I
separate
see that.
issue.
Yeah, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure because
Great. Okay, John, that's great. And John, Call, you'll be able to staff this, okay?
Yeah, I'll if we'll just confirm who's all on board, I'll send out an email
Okay.
and provide some support to, help. The idea is first to come back with a nice rough picture, and then this group can help refine it, and then come back maybe another or at following time to just refine it all the way down to where it's finalized. So.
Great, that's good. Lynn, if you can get me the names of the folks that we're going to have involved in this, I'll visit with all of them individually to make sure that they agree.
Okay, I'll take care of that tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, John, do you have anything else on item 4?
Nope, that was it.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll now go on to item 5 then, which is a discussion from Julie Anderson, who's a member of our committee, to talk about the presentation to the city council concerning the moratorium that was referenced earlier. So Julie?
Yep, I'm here. So, when Lynn called and I said that John said I wanted to talk, I was like, what? No, John, stop putting words in my mouth. But anyway, as she talked to me about it, as Lynn and I talked about it, we did our presentation, and as a lot of you know, it didn't go over very well. Councilman Swanson kind of let go a little bit, and hey, he's entitled to his opinion. But as we discussed it the day after in our meeting, I wasn't really sure where we should go with this. Obviously the city was like, no, but then when I listened as much as I could last night to the city council meeting, we were kind of in and out with internet. I kind of got the impression that that's where the city council was now leaning as they started talking about under the 7-Eleven discussion. And I could be wrong because, like I said, we were in and out. But the little impression I got was that this is, something. And then Grant, you have, just said, you think this is important. So I guess we need to make a decision as to whether this is what we want to do. If again, we're going to, come back to the city council, change some things around, do some things a little differently to make them realize why we did this.
I'm trying to meet with different city council members at this point. I think that Councilman Barker is willing to bring it to the city council again, and
Okay.
hopefully by that point in time there'll be an understanding, and this will just slide through. That's what I hope. The one city councilman I've not been able to catch despite repeated attempts is Phil. But we'll get him.
can I say something? And this is just my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I love that Ryan's on there, and I love that he's giving them updates on what we're talking about and a part of this. I think we as a committee should be able to be put on the agenda, and our council members should be able to listen to those of us who are also working hard for our city as committee members and residents, present our idea. And that should be acceptable, and it should be listened to.
Would I say something?
And I don't say that, I just, I think Ryan is fantastic, and I think his updates and keeping them, updated with what we're doing generally is fantastic and should be done. But I think that our committee should present it as a committee.
I have some thoughts on that. I worked with city councils for 22 years. And And in this situation, we are a committee that's been requested by the mayor, and the council approves that we are a committee. But in my experience, this is a document from the city, and it ought to come from somebody that works for the city. I think Ryan should present it, or even Rob, or possibly the mayor, because
Okay.
this is a city document and a city.
Well, I appreciate
person.
that. Then why are we doing the work to put it
Okay.
together?
Well, because the work that we do should go through these people, and then whoever the presenter is can say, if you'd like to hear from the committee that discussed this, we have them here, and I would like them to present it. But seriously, I have no problem with the council looking to a council member, the staff, or a mayor to present a change in some document for the city.
John, thanks for that comment. I'm going to ask John Call to chip in on two things here regarding kind of how he feels about staff making reports, because then they basically take somewhat of a position. And then John, also some input on how the committee can approach this in a more acceptable way from your experience with the city. Can you address those two items, please, John Call?
Sure. So I think the mayor alluded to one of the first thing, which is this is a policy question. And if you want, the trouble with a policy question is when the staff presents it, we're not typically giving a recommendation we're giving options. And so by having a committee member do the presentation, they're allowed to take a position and actually take a stance on these policy questions. Sometimes, in planning commission, when staff presents, they're able to take an actual position because they're making a recommendation on an administrative item. But this is a purely legislative item, and so it puts the staff in a little bit of a awkward position because of that, not wanting to take a position that might be contrary to other opinions in the room. And then I don't want to undermine or belittle the position that this group has. I mean, you are all members of an official committee of the city of North Ogden, and your opinions are here because they're valid opinions, and you're allowed to share those, especially where this group has been designated as a policy recommending body. I do know, obviously, based on the conversation last time, that there are council members who feel that maybe this policy is not one that's in the wheelhouse of this group, but I don't think that necessarily means that this group shouldn't be the one making that recommendation, even if the recommendation was coming as a citizen as opposed to a committee member. But does that answer the questions that you would ask me to, Mayor?
I think it does on why we would like, and John said maybe a council member, the mayor, or staff. I think we can eliminate probably the staff. I'd be happy to help. I'm a believer where someone's given an assignment, and that is Councilman Barker. If I could make a suggestion, I think it ought to be a joint presentation between the chair people and the council member that's been here, and with my support. But I would make that recommendation that the presentation be made by Grant and Stephanie and Ryan. Ryan maybe making the introduction and laying down the pavement on the road. Grant and Stephanie giving the details, and me offering up support. I would, John, though I maybe missed this, you've been around the city a long time. Give the presenters a hint on how to approach this so they can get past first base. Because I think that's what happened is you know, they were thrown out before they got to first base. So,
I mean, I think the focus and you know, Mayor, this group kind of has its charter established by state code, which basically says the purpose of the general plan is to provide guidance for the city moving forward. I think the first goal of any presentation would be to establish how what's being requested is tied directly to that goal. And I think in this case, the group has focused on that they're trying to get some time to react and provide a plan so that we don't get more townhomes next to the cannery or more things that degrade our opportunity and our chances to make the type of place that this group wants to make. And I think if it starts at that perspective, and then ties into the mission or the goal of this group and the reason it was created, then that's the best chance of success. And sometimes it's, you know, it's baby steps to move that direction as opposed to helping people understand the vision for the future. But I mean, that's just the approach that I think might be the best, is tying it back to the purpose of this group and making it clear that why the committee feels that this is in that wheelhouse, and how that type of help from the council will further the ability of this group to create a general plan that works well for the city.
Okay, would the committee be okay if Stephanie and I sat down with Councilman Barker and also with John and kind of strategize how the presentation goes, who does what, how it's discussed, etc. We could probably even do that maybe in a face-to-face meeting over fire station. I know that there's some room over there to to gather around. But if
I think a few of us can separate 6 feet.
and I think you've got good work that's been done by Julie as she headed this up. I wouldn't disregard the great work she's done.
No.
Just another suggestion for your consideration. I found this to be true in a lot of the instances I've been in. The first thing is, and John kind of mentioned this, is why are you approaching the city council with this?
Right.
Why does this need to be considered?
Yeah.
The second thing is what needs to be considered.
Right.
And then how, the 3 standard things. And then additionally, people like options, right? They don't like a whole list, but sometimes it's good to have plan A and plan B. And sometimes it's not an all or nothing. So you might want to consider, having one option. If option A is accepted, that's good. It's probably the best, but if not, option B might be the best we can do. So just some things for you to consider in the approach.
Okay. Good. Julie, you're okay to be involved in this also, I hope?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, could you repeat that? I wanted to see how enthusiastic that was.
So I have to share something really fast. Sorry, the wind's been blowing in my eyes, and so I'm like, ugh. One thing I learned a number of years ago when I wanted a bill passed on Capitol Hill was Curtis Oda shared something with us after we got the bill passed. And one of the things he said is, this is the way it should be done. Citizens should bring it before us with the help of, with the help of a legislature.
Right.
And I think that is most probably one of the, as I listen to this conversation, is we've forgotten. This is not the city council's town. It's our town. And if we have ideas, suggestions, it may not have been done the right way. I tried the best to do what you talked about, Mayor.
You did a great job.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not
You don't have to apologize.
But I don't even know how to put it into words. Sorry. But I will keep working on it.
Good.
I guess that's all I've got to say.
And I would just say this, from my standpoint, you are citizens. You have been selected out of the base of our citizens to represent your constituents. So don't look past the fact that you've got plenty of people you can talk to. But, to try to get consensus among 20,000 people or even 100 people, but you always have the right to get input from people in the community, and it never hurts to talk to them to get ideas. But I would hope that the city council looks at this group as citizens of North Ogden. And, fortunately or unfortunately, you have elected 5 city council people and a mayor, and you've entrusted in them to make decisions for the city. And, unfortunately, as much as we'd like it to be a democracy, it's not. And so Grant knows this. It's figuring out how to deal with those people that you've elected. And the real thing is if they're not listening, your voice counts where? when you mark that ballot.
Right.
But you have elected the city council, and you're right, it's not their city, but you've elected them to make the major decisions regarding your city.
Yeah.
So
I understand that. But I think sometimes it's the approach that they give.
yeah,
I think respect goes both ways.
it does. You're 100%.
And I think that's what happened in the meeting, was a little bit of respect wasn't given where it should have been. Is I guess all I'm saying is, we
Right.
weren't there to, this was just something that we were presenting.
You're right.
And so respect is a very important part of,
Yes, it
I've
is.
learned on Capitol Hill.
Yes.
You won't, but respect is important. And that night it didn't happen.
Well,
In my books. In my books. In
And I
my
wanna-
books.
Mine too.
And I want to reiterate what Stephanie said. It wasn't that you weren't prepared. It wasn't that you didn't do your homework. There is one difference here. And from the last time is you have Ryan Barker now with a specific assignment and your interface. And I have a great deal of trust in Ryan Barker.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so I think that's one difference that we have maybe that we didn't really call upon before. And I think that's one of the reasons I thought this thing through is sometimes you have to put some bait on the hook before you throw it into the water to catch a fish. And sometimes when you go to catch the fish all at one time, people they kind of get shocked. So in my madness, and Councilman Barker is with us, my madness is that as Councilman Barker kind of updates the council as we go along, we won't have any shock, and Councilman Barker can, kind of clear the way for some things. So I think, Julie, that's hopefully a difference, and I'm 100% behind you.
I agree with Ryan being out there. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I like the idea of Ryan with us working together. I just think that the committee should still be presenting as well.
Well, once again, you have the committee there as support. And I would hope that the entire committee would come when this presentation is made. There is strength in numbers. Grant can tell you that from his service in the legislature. There is, there's power in numbers.
Right.
And I'll go to my grave saying this. I might not agree with everyone, but I will always respect their opinion. They're entitled to respect. And I can guarantee you'll get that from Councilman Barker.
Yeah, I think so. I know so.
Well, and Julie, I feel badly. You just waded into a hornet's nest there, and it was not pretty and it was not fun. And we all appreciate your willingness to endure that, because we all learned a lesson from what happened.
Yeah.
We absolutely did learn a lesson. That part I'm fine with, so
Okay, great.
no problem at all.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, once again, Julie, I don't think we can say enough how much, we appreciate your passion and diligence in serving the city. And, we've got to make sure we elevate all of our discussions and try to take the personal things out. And that's what we'll be shooting for. And I would just remind all of us, and this isn't defense of anybody, that, we all make mistakes. We all have our weaknesses, and sometimes they shine out in times when it's not the best, but we're all working to get better and improve. And so somebody once told me opportunities abound. Any further discussion on that regarding the presentation and how we're going to go about that? Have we got any outline, timeframes?
Can maybe Stephanie, could you set up a meeting maybe with you and I and Julie and
Yes.
Councilman Barker, and let's get together down at the fire station and kind of hammer out an outline and some direction.
Absolutely.
If John Call would be involved in that too, that would be very helpful, because he will
No.
play a great supporting role.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
I know
Yeah, I
John
think
is,
that would be great.
Yep.
no, I know John is really seeking to have more meetings in his
Yeah.
life. I know he's kind of lacking. I found he's kind of lacking meetings on a daily basis.
Well, we'll make sure it doesn't go too long.
What
I'll
Yeah.
email you guys.
Thank
yeah,
you.
let's try to put a time frame to that. See if we can't meet by the end of next week.
Okay.
And if you need me, call me. Otherwise, I'll stay out of your way so I don't get ran over.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to item 6 on our agenda then. That would be comments from the committee. Any staff comments? Any further comments from the committee?
Hey, Mayor,
Hey, Councilman Barker.
I finally got a word in.
Good. Well, if you lose your video, we could see you raising your hand, but
I know, but I'm on my cell phone and I don't know how to turn on the video on a cell phone, so I don't do that.
you're on, Councilman Barker.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate the work that Julie did presenting about a month ago, which we just talked about. Since then, I've been hammering at home each meeting the importance. If you listened last night, we had discussion about the 7-Eleven, and after our discussion, I said, this is why it's so important that we get this moratorium, and so we can decide what needs to come in. The mayor put it out great. The first time we heard about it was from Julie a month ago. Now we've got debate, and now the council's ready for it. I think we can get this moratorium passed.
I agree. Thanks, Ryan. That was, yeah.
I wrote that down as a commitment, Councilman Barker.
Okay,
All right.
we'll work on it.
Okay,
We'll get
you got to do some behind the scenes work.
Yep. We'll
right.
start politicking.
I'm not sure you like that, but we'll see. We'll.
I'm glad that's you.
That's why you have Grant on this committee too.
We got a experienced politician.
Right.
Any comments from our members of the Planning Commission? Don or Eric? Thanks so much for joining us. Any comments? Okay. Just wanted to give you an opportunity. Any comments from Lynn or John?
None for me.
Nope.
All right, let's see. We did just get a chat from Eric, and said he had nothing to say, but he wanted to thank everyone for their participation tonight. And I would just echo that. As I look at our group here, I think as we get organized and we have the input, and that's why, normally I think the mayor's been the chair of this committee. But I view you as citizens, and I think that we need to listen to the citizens. So I'll be here as your support. I have full confidence in Stephanie and Grant that they'll lead us where we need to be here. I would just ask that you, commit to participating and getting this done. This is very, very important. This isn't a light assignment. This is kind of helping set the vision for the future of our city, which I believe we all love. And I just want to thank you again for your willingness to help. And, somebody once said, the only time you fail is when you don't get back up and try again. And so we're going to give it our best shot, and we're going to work together and come up with something that's great for this city. And once again, I've always said getting it done timely is important, but even more importantly is doing it right. So with that, once again, thanks for your time this evening. I think we have some assignments. Does anyone not understand the assignments they took on tonight, time-wise and things? I'm grateful that Rob Scott committed to have that map out next Tuesday. That was totally awesome of him to do that. And then on Monday, I think he said he'd have the list out to you by then.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to beg off on I'll have the list out to you Tuesday. I'll be coming home from Yellowstone on Monday.
All right.
I'll work with the other staff members to get you a timeline on our map.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Just wanted to see if you were still awake.
Barely.
All right. All right. Good evening and thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you.